What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. We have a Sweet 16 set after the first weekend of March Madness, and Matt is going to join me in just a moment to break down the first weekend and start looking forward to weekend number two, the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight that starts on Thursday. But before we get started, right before we got on the air, the Patriots signed Stefon Diggs to a 3-year, $69 million contract. If you listen to the podcast, you know I am not a huge fan of Stefon Diggs, and I haven't been for quite some time. But I think a move that was absolutely necessary for the Patriots. It sounds like a lot of money, $23 million a year for an older guy coming off of an ACL tear, especially one that I have called washed up on this podcast multiple times. But only 26 million of it is guaranteed, which is only about a third of it. So smart contract. Get the guy coming off the ACL tear. He may not be able to contribute that much this season, maybe more near the end of the season than the beginning, because he's going to have to recover from the injury and then get caught up to speed. And if he plays well, you have him for another 2 years. If not, you can cut him with very little penalty. So I think high upside, low risk move for the Patriots, who had a buttload of money to spend still, and they get a potential weapon for Drake May. Still a lot of work needed on that offense, both offensive line and in the receiving core still. And honestly, in the backfield, because Ramondre is pretty good. He's okay. You know, he's not the guy I'd really like to see them draft another running back. But NFL draft season is coming up on the podcast. We got March Madness this week. Next week, we'll be back to talk about the Final Four and start looking ahead to the NFL draft. And then we got 4 straight draft episodes leading up to the NFL draft, and then a couple post-draft episodes. So we will get more into the Patriots roster construction, what they need to do, who I want to see them pick in the next couple of weeks. But for today, Matt and I are talking about March Madness. Just a reminder, you can hit us up, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Let us know how your bracket's doing. I am at the point where I'm going to win probably all the pools I'm in if Duke wins the championship. So pulling heavy for Duke here on the podcast. That may come through in the next hour. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's talk March Madness. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, fresh off of the first weekend of March Madness, heading into the Sweet 16. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Can we really call it madness right now?
March tournament basketball. March Madness sounds
March
better.
mildness.
How do you feel about the tournament so far? You seem like you're a little meh on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly a secret that there are less upsets than we have had compared to the last 3, 4 years. Always going to be less exciting. I don't think that necessarily means that, like, it's worse for the tournament either. I think it's much better for the media when there's a bunch of upsets, for sure. It's a field day for them. But at a certain point, usually these Cinderella stories hit a tipping point where in the later stages of the tournament, it actually tends to decrease the quality of the basketball that we're seeing on the court, because they just don't have the talent, or at least the depth of talent on their roster to compete with a true blue blood school.
Yeah, I actually really agree with you there. And I talk about it every year and I get shit for it every year, where I always say the Cinderella runs are really exciting through the first couple weeks of the tournament. But inevitably what happens is we have a week off between the round of 32 and the Sweet 16, or we have a week off between the Elite Eight or the Final Four or whatever. And these teams end up going against a much more talented team who's had time to prepare for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, it's fun to watch St. Peter's win 2 games, but the Sweet 16 game ends up being horrible, or the Elite Eight game where they lose by like 50. And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
well, that was fun while it lasted. I You said that there's been a lack of upsets in the tournament. I am going to go out on a limb and say that this is the least amount of upsets we've ever had. I think, at least in my time watching the tournament. And I actually,
Yeah, I mean, if not the least, certainly like the least shocking,
yeah,
right? Like we didn't get like a 15 seed winning.
yeah. Let me throw some numbers at you. So this is the first time since 2007 that there is no seed 11 or lower or 11 or higher. It's always weird. So between 11
Yeah.
and 16, first time since 2007, no seed 11 or lower has been in the Sweet 16. So it's been 18 years since this has happened. We have all four ones. We have three twos, two threes, three fours, a five, two sixes, and a 10. And our 10, who is maybe quote unquote the Cinderella of this tournament, is John Calipari with a bunch
Yep.
of people that he brought over from Kentucky and a top 15 recruiting class at Arkansas. So a very different type of Cinderella. There are no mid majors in the Sweet 16 for the first time that I could find. Like going all the way back to 2000, I couldn't find an instance where there were no mid majors. Even in like 2007, there was mid majors. There are only four conferences represented in the Sweet 16 for the first time in NCAA tournament history. So we have seven SEC schools, which is a new record for most teams by one conference to get into the Sweet 16. We have four Big 10 teams, four Big 12 teams, and then one team from the ACC. Favorites so far in the tournament are 39-9, straight up. You know, one of the quote unquote first round upsets was Colorado State as a 12 seed over
Hmm.
Memphis as a 5. And Colorado State was actually favored in that game.
Yeah.
So if we look at just favorites by record, it's 39-9. I agree with you. I think Cinderella went home early. I don't know if Cinderella ever showed up to the party.
She forgot her ID, couldn't get past the bouncer.
Yeah, the fairy godmother never came to grant her a wish. Um, but I agree with you that I don't think it's a bad thing. I actually probably going to get some hate for this, but I think that this is a good thing for the tournament for a few reasons. One, the viewership of the tournament is the highest it's been since 1993. Through the first weekend, it's averaging 9.4 million viewers through the second round. The other things, one, I don't care about the numbers next to the team name. I care about how good the basketball is on the floor. It doesn't matter to me if it's a 1 versus 2 or a 15 versus 16 if it's a good basketball game. And we had some bangers in the second round. Maryland versus Colorado State, coming down to Colorado hitting a three to take the lead with 3 seconds left,
Yeah.
and Derek Queen hitting the buzzer beater to win that game. Florida versus UConn was really good. BYU versus Wisconsin, I thought was going to be the game of the tourney so far until the Maryland Colorado State game. That game was excellent. Houston versus Gonzaga was good. And then we had Arkansas upsetting St. John's,
Hmm.
which I feel like you don't need no upsets. You don't need like extreme chaos because, like we mentioned, it makes the quality of basketball worse later in the tournament. But like, you need a little juice, and I feel like Arkansas over St. John's kind of gave us a little juice. Like, I feel like the tournament needed that, and I was frustrated by that because I actually picked St. John's to go out in the second round, but I picked them to lose to Kansas and not Arkansas. Had the wrong Kansas there. But reason number two, like you said, less upset sets up better basketball games down the road. Um, I wrote in my notes that Cinderella is really fun until the clock strikes midnight and you remember that Cinderella is a peasant and they get treated like one later in the tournament. And I would rather look forward to games this weekend like Florida versus Maryland, Duke versus Arizona, and Auburn versus Michigan than be sitting here and be like, well, how much further can Montana go until they get absolutely smacked? And most importantly, and maybe the most controversial thing I'll say on the podcast today, I think we've been oversaturated with upsets. I think we've had too many upsets to the point where upsets are not special anymore unless they're like really, really crazy, like a 16 versus a one or like a 15 versus a two. And then like the St. Peter's run was really fun a couple of years ago,
Yep.
Fairleigh Dickinson and uh whatever the other school, UAB or UASB, whatever the can never
Um,
remember the stupid school that beat Virginia and then got
Earl
super.
Roberts.
Yeah, Oral Roberts was fun, but that one school beat Virginia. It was the first 16 to ever upset a one, and then they got super up their own
Hmm.
asses about it for like 3 years, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, shut up!" But those runs are fun, but I feel like now we're at the point where a 12 versus a five upset is just expected.
Yeah.
It's not exciting. Like an 11 versus six is basically even on paper to a lot of people. Like that Drake versus Mizzou game, uh,
Hmm.
everybody was calling that out before the tournament. They're like, that's the upset, that's the upset. And back in the day, you didn't used to be able to predict upsets like that because they didn't happen so frequently.
Yeah.
And now it's like not special. And I kind of want to get back to the point where like when we see an upset of any caliber, it's like, oh, holy shit, what a game. Like it's more exciting and it's more of a point to talk about than, oh, well, I picked the 12 verse five, got two of them just like everybody else did. Like it's too much. It's too much
Yeah.
and it's not special anymore.
I think it's fair to say that America needs a palate cleanser. We we need we need a year or two where it's toned down so that it's not expected. The 5-12 matchups are like I can't remember what the stats are on it, but like it it's like a very clear mathematical thing that like you hunt those out.
Yeah, it's
This,
the stats like there's been at least one in every single tournament for like the last 20 years and
yep,
that the fives actually like or the 12s have a winning percentage of like 47% against the fives, which is like less than the 11s versus the sixes and the 10s versus the sevens. It's like the best winning percentage of any lower seed.
yeah,
And I think that is because the 12 seeds, the 12s and the 11s are typically like the very best um, mid majors,
yeah.
right? They're like the best mid majors that won their conference tournaments. And they're going up against what I would call like the wild card uh,
Hmm.
major teams where, it's like Clemson and Memphis and like teams
Yep.
they're good, but they weren't good enough to win their conference tournaments. And like for the most part,
Mhm.
like I know Clemson, I think lost in either the semifinals or the finals of their conference tournament, but like they're good teams, but they're not the best teams in their own conferences.
Yeah.
And I especially look at like that Mizzou versus Drake game. And the reason everybody was picking it out is because everybody's like, hey, Drake is the best mid major this year. It's either Drake or Colorado State. And Mizzou is like, the seventh or eighth best team in the SEC this season. So it's like a team that won 30 games versus a team that won 22, and everybody's like, well, the 22 is ranked higher, so
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like a lot of these mid-major teams too, like they've got a couple guys on there that are really good players who just got overlooked in the recruiting process because turns out a lot of kids play basketball in this country. Um, who knew? And then the rest of the roster is made up of guys that have been there for like 3 or 4 years. So like you're gonna get a lot more stable play out of them than like the the B team from the SEC or the ACC or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's like five guys who have played like 75 basketball games together versus
Hmm.
Kentucky, who's now played 30 basketball games together. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah. I think the important distinction, though, between like, I'm not saying I don't want upsets at all, but the thing that I think makes this tournament good, even though there weren't a lot of upsets, is that the teams that are in the Sweet 16 are different faces than what we're used to. Kind of like
Yeah.
UConn is out, so we're going to have a new champion for the first time in a couple of years, which is
Yep.
exciting. Um, and like some of these teams have won championships before. Like, Florida had a good stretch when we were younger, like 2007, 2008 range. But like Florida hasn't been good for a while.
Yeah.
Houston's never won a championship. You know,
Hmm.
Duke is Duke, and we all need a good villain to either root against or root for, depending on what your bracket looks like right now, which we can talk
Yeah.
about in a minute. Auburn, like they've been good the last couple of years, but they haven't made it very far. We
Hmm.
got Michigan and Michigan State are there, which is fun for us being in
Yeah.
Michigan. Like, but there are teams that, like Ole Miss and Maryland and BYU and like teams we're really not used to having here. So there are some new faces to kind of go along with the Dukes and the Kentuckys of the world. It's not like
Yeah.
we're sitting here looking at Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, UConn, Kentucky,
Yep.
like all the guys that we're super used to being here. There are some new teams to root for. Um, I don't know. Who are you rooting for the rest of the tournament?
Crab five, baby.
My heart says Crab Five. Just fucking love it. I texted you over the weekend. I was like, do you think that they have like a Crab Five handshake where they make like little crab claws and like high five? Um, my heart says Crab Five, but I'm basically in the position now where if Duke wins the national championship, then I win all my pools. I'll win my work pool. I'll win like all the other pools I entered. Because I committed a cardinal sin of filling out a bracket and a cardinal sin of podcasting. And after we did the episode last week, I'd mentioned on the episode that I had a picks bracket and a math bracket. And I had these two brackets and I'm like, okay, I got to submit one of them to all my pools. And I was like, really? Like, should I go with my gut or should I go with what the math is telling me? And thankfully for me, I went with what the math told me. And I submitted a bracket where the final four is Auburn, Duke, Florida, and Tennessee. And so now I'm in a very good position where the bracket I talked about last week had Clemson in the final four. uh, that would have not gone so well after what happened to them against McNeese in the first round of the tournament.
The irony of me picking McNeese in the first round, but also putting St. John's in the final four is hard to miss.
Probably feeling pretty good after the first round there.
Yeah, second round, not so
Not
much.
so much. Yeah, what's funny is I was watching that Clemson McNeese game, and if anybody didn't watch it, Clemson had the most abysmal first half that you have ever seen a college basketball team play in the history of college basketball. They scored 13 points in the first half, and I think had like double digit turnovers. They were like one of 13 from three. And I was just sitting there saying, I still had Clemson to win that game in the bracket I did end up submitting, but I was like, thank God I did not submit this for my work pool. How embarrassing would
Yeah.
that have been? I'm like, yeah, I'm like, hey guys, I have this great sports podcast. You should all check it out. And I'm like in dead last in the work pool. Like, not great. But yeah, so the I did all the math. I went back and did all of like the trends and the math and all that stuff, and I came up with the final four that I had mentioned. And now I'm in good position where I'm like I'm not first in my work pool, but I'm the highest team that has Duke to win the championship. So ESPN says I have like the second best chance to win it right now. So all that said, uh, I'd like to see the Crab Five win, but I'm also rooting for Duke because I would really like to win all of these pools and get the extra money. And I think that this is the future of the tournament, and we're going to kind of have to get used to tournaments being a lot more chalky from here on out. I think that upsets are going to get rarer and rarer. Um, Maybe not like as much in the first round, but these 1 through 5, maybe some 6 seed stuff like that. I think they're just going to be extremely hard to take down for smaller teams moving forward. And I think this is a consequence of NIL becoming legal and the transfer portal being, basically removing all consequences from transferring and just being like, yeah, you know what? You could play literally wherever you want next season. Who cares? Because this is something we talked about with football before,
Yeah.
and it actually might be even more prevalent in basketball than it is in
Yeah.
football, where if you're a small team, anytime you even get somebody who might be good, they're going to transfer to a bigger school. I have two stats for you, and then I want to get how you feel on this. So there are 16 teams left. Out of the 16 teams, 11 of their leading scorers were not initially recruited by that team. Quote unquote, the best player on 11 of the 16 remaining teams was not initially recruited by that team. They were a transfer. Two of the teams whose leading scorer was recruited by the team are Duke and Maryland, and their leading scorer is a freshman, and it's Cooper Flagg and Derek Queen. If you're a small school, you are not getting Cooper Flagg and Derek Queen. Or if you're a small school, one of your guys is transferring to Alabama, Florida, Arizona, Arkansas, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Tennessee, Michigan, Auburn, or Houston, all of whom are led by transfers. The other thing that I would like to share is how many players on each team transferred into the school for the remainder. So Texas Tech has 9 transfers on their roster. Maryland and Michigan have 8 transfers. Arkansas, Arizona, Alabama, Kentucky, and Ole Miss all have 7 transfers. Florida, Tennessee, Auburn all have 6 transfers. BYU, Houston, Michigan State have 3 transfers. Duke and Purdue have 0. Teams are going to be built off transfers moving forward. It's going to be a very, very large part of team building where if you're not like Duke, who could just get elite recruiting class after elite recruiting class and have the Zion Williamsons and Cooper Flaggs of the world, like Florida, Texas Tech, Arizona, all these schools built off transfers. And not only transfers from smaller schools, transfers from other big schools, like Arizona's best player they got from North Carolina. Yeah. Florida's best player they got from like Iona. Auburn's best player they got from Morehead State. Like a lot of these guys are from FAU and a lot of the smaller schools. So it's going to be very hard for the smaller schools to maintain continuity moving forward when, you have like a Bennett Sturts and he's awesome. And then it's like, okay, yeah, like I'm North Carolina. Don't mind if I do. Here's $2 million to come play for us. No one's saying no to that shit.
Especially at that age.
Well, like,
The-
how could you?
Yeah.
The guys we're talking about who are like the third, fourth, fifth year players who started at smaller schools, those guys are not going to the NBA. And
Yeah.
if they are, they're going late in drafts. They're probably not going to have a long NBA career,
Yeah.
and not have a, you know, profitable being a relative word here.
Mhm.
But between $2 and $5 million to go play
Yeah.
for North Carolina is more money than they're going to make maybe in their entire NBA career.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if you're not drafted in the first round, your contract isn't guaranteed. So,
Yeah.
like,
No, I don't blame anybody at all. And I saw another tweet today by Travis Branham, kind of drives the point home here. In 2024, they broke the record for portal entries on the opening day of the portal with 291. That was the most ever. In 2023, they had 175, and they said that was a lot. Matt, you want to guess how many players entered the transfer portal today on opening day? Keep in mind, the record is 295, set last year.
North of 295.
But yes, but how far north?
So far. Like Canada.
700 players entered the
Jesus.
transfer portal today.
God.
So what is there? 355 Division One teams or something like that. So let's say there's like 4,300 players in Division One. So 16% of all of the players who are returning to Division One basketball next year entered the transfer portal today.
What's interesting about that too, though, is that some of that is guys who went to bigger schools, didn't work out, who are probably going to smaller schools.
Yeah.
So while I would generally agree with you, like we're not going to see overall as many of these Cinderella stories, I don't think it's completely going away. Like I think we're still going to have years where it's a big thing, but it's not going to be every year.
Yeah. I agree to an extent, but I also think one of the biggest advantages that mid majors have in the tournament is continuity.
Hmm.
And that if you're building a good mid major program by bringing guys in from bigger schools who like didn't really work out for them, or maybe they want
Yeah.
to get closer to home, blah, 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 you're still not
Mhm.
going to have that team that's like, these five starters have been playing together since they were freshmen and they've played like 200 games together and they're
No,
blah,
but
blah,
I
blah.
think there's a lot of mid majors that would significantly benefit from adding someone to their roster who is a different caliber of athlete that just changes the math of what the other team has to do on the floor. And I think that transition is easier when you already have continuity with the players that you have on the roster already.
That's fair, especially because I broke the cardinal rule of picking upsets this weekend. I forgot. God damn it. I should have gone back and listened to our podcast from last year. But I said last year, I was like, my new rule for picking any upset is going to be that if I haven't watched the team that I'm picking, I'm going to go on YouTube and just watch some of their games and make sure I'm not picking a team of like accounting majors to like to beat Kentucky or
Yeah,
something, right? Like, because what happens inevitably is I'm like, ah, yeah, you know what? I look at like the advanced stats and all the stats and all that stuff, and I'm like, I kind of like Montana to give Wisconsin a hard time, and then I turn the game on, and it's like, oh god damn it, it's five kids from Montana. Like, there's no way they're beating Wisconsin. And so if you have like some more athletic kids who were initially
yeah,
recruited by higher programs and like had to take a step down, yeah, maybe you're a little bit more of a threat than, you know,
yeah.
what I watched the other day. And it happens every year. It's like, oh, hey, Colgate might be good. And it looks like five guys I saw at the Y last week. Like, yeah. And Duke's
Oh,
got,
hey, it's Keith from accounting.
yeah, like, oh, hey, Keith. And then like Duke's got, Cooper Flag and a center who's like 7'9". So Keith from accounting, probably not a great matchup for those guys.
What?
Keith, I thought you had it. Tearing up my bracket in front of accounting. Damn it, Keith. I need a jersey that says accounting on the front. It says Keith on the back. Right. Yeah. Go, Keith.
I can get that made for you.
That should be in the fouled out store.
Yeah.
right next to small boy season.
Guess what the logo is going to be?
Right. I hope it's not the baseball logo you sent me this morning. What a
It's literally on their official Instagram.
the craziest thing about today is that logo was like minus 5,000 to be your virtual background on this podcast. It's crabs instead. Um, I feel guilty even telling people to go and look this up, but the Chesapeake Oyster Catchers got a new logo today. um, don't Google it at work is all I'll say.
Yeah.
You know,
Nope.
maybe I was at work today, so maybe text me like a NSFW before you send the Chesapeake Oyster Catchers logo to me, because wow, that's that's a logo. Oh man, so lost my train of thought. I can't stop picturing the logo, and now I need to take a break. Oh, I had some like kind of random notes from the tournament so far. Um, so I think like a super chalky tournament is just as hard to pick as a super chaotic tournament. Because like who picks this? Who's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick all one, two, three, fours, and fives. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. We all sit there and we're like, okay, who's the 12 seed that can make a run? I had Drake in my Sweet 16, and to their credit, they
I
almost got there. But
yeah.
um, it's like if you don't have a double digit seed in your Sweet 16,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this can't be right.
Yeah. Well, and at first, like we could have had that this year, but Drake and Colorado State just ran into some really good teams.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the problem that we see in future tournaments too. Is just that like
Yeah.
these 1 through 4 seeds are just too strong, and it's just
Mhm.
going to be too hard for the smaller schools to take them down. And like credit where credit's due, Colorado State had it. They
Yeah.
absolutely had it. And Derek Queen, big boy play
Yeah.
there.
I
Like not only
mean,
not only is he a big boy, but that's a big boy play from a big boy.
yeah, I mean, is there anything he could have done that would have helped his draft stock more? Like,
I was just thinking, it's like it's not only the fact that he made the buzzer beater, but the fact that they got into the huddle and before the coach could draw up a play, Derek Queen's like, "Give me the effing ball," and then they give him the ball, and the center for the team takes a dude off the dribble to the hoop and does contact and makes the basket. And
yeah.
was it traveling? I mean, they're not going to call that in the NBA.
No.
So, so no, it's not. Um, but yeah, for like the
It won't matter in a few months. So,
stock up for sure. I think that Tankathon has him the number 10 prospect right now. I mean, not that Tankathon is like the end all be all for draft stuff, but I do like them. They have him, man, they have him going 13th to the Rockets. And all I'm going to say about that is that that's too late.
yeah.
It's too late. It's funny looking at the draft this year and thinking about the draft last year and how horrible it was. And then looking at this year and seeing that, oh God, man, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of the first 15 picks, projected picks, are freshmen right
Yep.
now. And then the other one, there's one sophomore and then one international player,
Yeah.
Nolan Traore from San Quentin. But yeah, like a lot of these guys are
Yeah.
freshmen who are playing in the tournament right now, except for stupid Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, who decided to go to Rutgers instead of going somewhere interesting that would actually play in the tournament. But
Right. Well, like, even just like looking at Derek Queen, okay, look at last year's draft. Put him in that draft. Where is he going?
first,
Yeah. Like he's
Honestly, like,
literally better than anyone else in that draft class.
yeah, I think Castle's actually been really good.
Yeah, Castle has kind of definitively been the best player out of that draft so far. Without Queen being in the NBA, it's hard to say whether or not he's definitively better than him right now. But like at the time, definitely a better prospect. So
Yeah. I mean, if it was having the hindsight of almost a full NBA season to say, like, yeah, I would take Castle, it's
yeah.
cheating a bit because if Queen had been in the draft last year, he would have gone first. But I just
Yep.
want to throw it out there to everybody that's listening. Your boy said that Stephon Castle should be the first pick in the NBA draft last year in a bad draft, and that I wanted no part of Reese Shea or Sar, who, man, they have not been good. Just
Yeah.
looking at some of the stuff right now, and Wolf. I think like Reese Shea at least has had a couple good games, but man, Sar is shooting 39% from the field for the season. Oh man, Reed Shep.
That's late 90s, early 2000s shit.
Yeah, you remember for the draft last year, people were looking at Reed Shepard and being like kind of saying that he should be the first overall pick because of his shooting.
Yep.
He's shooting 33% from the floor, 28% from three this season in 12 minutes per game.
Doing it.
Yeah, not great, not great takes, but yeah. Castle, I mean, it's funny because just looking back at the draft, we're like, yeah, obviously he's the best player in that draft, but it's not like
Yeah.
he's a particularly awesome rookie. He's averaging 14, 3, and 4, basically. Like he's having a
Yeah.
decent rookie season, but he's still minus 3.7 box plus minus. You know, he's still a rookie. So
Yeah.
um anyway, but yeah, like I think, Derek Queen is they're looking at him going like 13th right now, and he
Hmm.
definitely would have been the number one pick in last year's draft. So this is a loaded draft class,
Yeah.
actually. And I like VJ Edgecombe is the number 4 prospect. He plays for Baylor. I liked what I saw out of him the other day for the most part in their game against Duke. Jeremiah Fears looked okay for Oklahoma. Jace Richardson, really tough day for Michigan State the other
Hmm.
day. Jason Richardson's son, he's in the
Yeah.
draft. So we'll see with him. Haman Malak is the guy I was talking about from Duke. He's 7'2", 250. So they have 3 freshmen right now who are going in the top 11. Flag, Con Knuppel, and this guy. And man, someone was trying to inbound the ball the other day, and this guy Malak was guarding them, and it was like, dude, how the hell do you get the ball in past this guy? The dude, like, he had the ball by his feet, and he like looks up to throw the ball in, and he just keeps looking, just keeps looking up. I was like, yeah, that's not gonna go well for you. This guy 7'2", 250. He's from the NBA Academy in Africa, from South Sudan. I was trying to see if they had his wingspan on here. He's got some long ass arms. I everybody go watch Duke in their game against Arizona. Uh, not only to watch these freshmen, but the Caleb Love versus Duke thing is really fun. Caleb Love is Arizona's point guard who used to be North Carolina's point guard, and he's had some pretty big games against Duke before and some pretty shitty games against Duke. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes.
Wingspan reported at 7'4.5".
Yeah. Yeah. That's a wingspan. He's taller from arm to arm than he is standing up, and he's 7'2". Who do you think the breakout player of the tournament is so far?
It's hard to say especially because there's only been two games. I don't know who you got.
I I don't really have one either right now. But I was thinking like, it's usually around this time we start being able to pick one out, and like this
Hmm.
week going to help us pick it out more. But remember, I was like last year or the year before, there was that point guard from Kansas State.
Asmus. Yeah.
No,
Oh,
Ace
oh,
missed
yeah.
too, but there was
Yeah.
that point guard from Kansas State who was just like he was really
Yeah.
short and he was just dropping bombs on people through the first couple rounds of the tour, like 30
Yeah.
burgers and like
Yeah.
I forget his name. Let me look him up real quick. Oh, Marquise Noel. That
Yes.
was his name. And he was just like, yeah, 5'8", 160 from Harlem, New York. And he just came into the tournament and was like dropping bombs on people. And so we kind of knew from the first couple games, we're like, this guy is the guy. And he was like super fun to watch. 19 assists in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, he had that 19 assist game against Michigan State in the NCAA tournament too. So he was like, we knew immediately with him. We don't really know right now because like the biggest game of the tournament so far was that wing from Creighton who had like 20 something like 29, 14, and 7 in the first game against
Yeah.
Louisville. And it was like the first time there was only two people who had ever done that, and it was him and Dwayne Wade.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, ooh, this might be our guy if they can beat Auburn. Didn't happen. So we still have Cooper Flag, who I don't really know if he's a breakout candidate with how famous he already is, but
Yeah.
I was watching the Baylor game and I was like, God, Cooper Flag really hasn't had that great of a game. And I looked down at the box score and he had 18, 9, and 6 in 28 minutes. And I was like, yeah, he's really good. Um, Walter Clayton Jr. from the point guard from Florida um, really struggled against UConn the other day, but then came through when it mattered most. Johnny Broom from Auburn, we're still kind of waiting on him. He was the SEC player
Hmm.
of the year. Caleb Love from Arizona, who I just mentioned, like if he has a massive game versus Duke, that could be it. Um, but I think my pick for the tournament so far is the guy we were just talking about. I think it's Derek Queen.
Yeah.
He had
That
the
was
shot of
kind of what I
yeah,
was thinking.
he had the shot of the tourney so far. It's just that we haven't seen a massive, massive game out of anybody really
Yeah.
yet, except for that kid from Creighton. Um, so I mean, if he has a big game against Florida, watch out and like watch him fly up draft boards after the Sweet 16. And then the only other thing I had, I mentioned this to you before we got on the air, but uh, I think the tournament ended at the perfect time for Aura Khan, the manager from McNeese State. So if you missed this, I don't know how anybody would miss this, but McNeese did like a WWF style entrance where they came out of the locker room and their manager, who goes by Aura Khan, Aura is like the, swag or Gen Gen Z, or what are we in now? Gen Alpha, whatever generation they're in. It's the new slang
Yeah.
word for like swag or like being cool is Aura. So they call him Aura Khan. He comes out with this massive boombox blasting this drill rap song from Chicago that we'll talk about in a second. And all the players are like hanging off of him and they all got like chains on and they're like rapping and like dancing all the way to the court. And it's like super fun. All of the cheerleaders from McNeese State have socks on that are all Aura Khan's face on their socks. Like he's like an icon at this program. And I was watching it and I was like, man, if McNeese makes it to the Sweet 16, we are going to become so oversaturated with this kid that America is going to despise him by the end of next weekend. Um,
Yeah.
so it was a bummer for McNeese not to go further, but I thought it was perfect for him to. You have the game against Clemson where they win, and everybody's like, "Whoa, what's going on with this Oricon thing?" And then they all watch him and McNeese against Purdue. Uh, so everybody gets to see it and everybody gets introduced to it, gets interested in it, but now they're gone. And it's,
Yep.
you know, he was dangerously close to going into like Sister Jean territory from
Yeah.
the Loyola Chicago run, where it's just like we see him more than we see the basketball game, and like we
Yeah.
all have to sit through an interview with him, and this is like perfect time for his brand is like leave them wanting more, not too much, not too much. Oricon, think about your next move this offseason, buddy.
Oh, it's like that American Dad quote that Stan has about Emilio Estevez.
He's made an amazing movie and completely disappeared. Yeah, that I mean, it would not have been his fault. Like I'm not trying to disparage the kid in any way at all because the whole
No.
the whole thing I thought was actually really cool, but the way that the media like clings on to these things
Hmm.
is just that they would have oversaturated us with him. We people would have been selling Oricon socks and like
Well,
would have just been too much.
and once you kind of cross a certain threshold, you're encouraged to ham it up. You're encouraged to kind of like almost view yourself as like at an elevated level of self-importance, all that stuff. Like it starts to snowball when people get put into those positions. So it's for his own sake, it's kind of good that it ended when it did because it ended before it could have the the crowd could turn on him and God, the things that people will say about a person on the internet, like I'm just glad that he didn't have to deal with that. So
Yeah, I mean, like I thought Sister Jean is like the best example of she never did anything wrong. All she
yeah.
did was show up to the games and root for the school that she loved. And by the time that Loyola Chicago was done,
Hmm.
everybody was like, "Oh my god, I hate this old woman so much." It's
Yeah.
not her fault. They just like they kept showing her, they kept like wanting to interview her and like beat us over the head with her.
Yeah.
And like the media needs to chill because like now it's years later
Hmm.
and people are still like, "God, I hate Sister Jean."
Yeah. Well, and when you're, you know, an older lady, you're probably mature enough to be able to handle that. But, you know, the phrase young and dumb is there for a reason.
Yeah. But also related to this, can I say that probably the biggest winner of the entire NCAA tournament so far has been Chicago rapper Ludfo, who his song In and Out is the song that McNeese plays when they do this entrance. And that song was streaming an average of 50,000 times a day on Spotify before the
Jeez.
NCAA tournament started. It is now streaming an average of 400,000 times a day. So listenership has gone up eightfold on Spotify alone. And I can tell you that I have listened to In and Out multiple times today because like the song is catchy. It's kind of a banger. Uh, but yeah, I think like, and it's not a new song. It's been out since like 2018 or something.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know how this was the song that they picked, but yeah, it's the song's kind of like taking off and having this whole new life because these kids played it walking out of their locker room and it's kind of a banger.
We talked about it a little bit, but I I do think that not only was that a uh bit of a resurgence game for Coach Cal, but I do think that was a statement win for Coach Cal. Um, we you had mentioned aside from his national championship through text, but like if I remember correctly, that was the Anthony Davis team, correct?
I believe so. I
Yeah.
believe so.
So, I mean, like, it still is a national championship, right? Uh, However, when you have Anthony Davis playing college basketball, I don't know how much coaching you have to do because we see how good he is in the NBA when he's not hurting himself, which is a
Heck,
key scenario, but
he they were 37-2 that season
yeah.
that they had Anthony Davis. Uh and he like we talked about prospects on the podcast last week and
Hmm.
how Anthony Davis was in that second tier prospect only behind
Yeah.
like LeBron James and uh Victor Wembanyama, where it was like, dude, this guy is the elitist of the elite. It would be the first pick in any draft that does not involve LeBron James or
Yeah.
Wemby. Um, and it's because he was so incredible in college. But
Hmm.
I think it's a really good win for Cal from the fact that I think he had to coach more this year
Hmm.
than he ever did at Kentucky, where they started 0-5 in the SEC this season and really had to like take a look in the mirror and be like, who are we?
It almost is like one of those situations where like he had to go back to his roots.
Yeah, I think people forget that he led University of Massachusetts to a 1 seed and a Final Four appearance
Yeah.
before he was at Kentucky. Like I think that Coach Cal is like fairly
I
and
mean,
unfairly viewed as he is just really good at recruiting super talented guys like Anthony Davis and Devin Booker and De'Aaron Fox and like all these guys he's had, and that his success is purely based on recruiting. And I agree it's been a huge part of his success, but like he's also a really good coach. Because he does have good freshmen on here like Carter Knox and Boogie Fland and stuff,
hmm.
but their leading scorer is a senior, John L. Davis. And they have, it's transfers and it's other stuff that he brought in, but you got to keep in mind that like when he took this job over, they had one guy on the roster at Arkansas. That literally one player, and he had to build an entire roster out of recruiting and transfers, and then coach that team up and make it into a team. And now they're back in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like people kind of forget about his years at Memphis too. Like he made that Memphis program. It's not like he took over a above 500 program. And they were pretty consistently winning like 25 plus games a year before he went to Kentucky.
Yeah, he had Derrick Rose at Memphis, didn't he?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
For
so
one year.
he was there for the Derrick Rose year. Yeah, like, but I think that drives home the point though is like, yes, he's a really good recruiter, but he's also a really good program builder
Hmm.
and good at coaching because, like, yeah, even in the non Derrick Rose years, that team was consistently very good.
Yep.
And I think like when you coach for a program like Kentucky, that there are unfair expectations put on you where it's like, hey, you got to
Yeah.
win a national championship every year or else like don't bother. Um, so I think this is probably refreshing for him and
Hmm.
capping it off with beating Rick Pitino, who's one of the greatest college coaches of all time.
Yep.
Also, amazing program builder who has built up St. John's in short
Yeah.
order here. Um, and an old rival of his from all the way back when that UMass team went to the Final Four. They lost to Rick Pitino
Hmm.
and Kentucky. Um, and they have a relationship from a long time ago, so that probably felt good for him. Um, also want to say good on Mark Pope, the current coach of Kentucky, who took over when Calipari left or was fired or whatever that,
Hmm.
you know, mutual parting of ways or whatever stupid thing. Has there ever been more pressure to make a Sweet 16 than there was on Mark Pope after John Calipari made the Sweet 16?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point.
because just imagine like Coach Cal makes the Sweet 16 his first year at Arkansas, and then you lose to Illinois in the round of 32. You're getting
Yeah,
fucking hammered for that.
God, you might just get fired on the spot.
I honestly like I think it's kind of an interesting subplot of the tournament moving forward is who goes further between Coach Cal and Kentucky. Because if Coach Cal makes it to the Elite Eight, Mark Pope, you better damn well make it to the Elite Eight, buddy.
The subplot of the rest of the tournament should be they need to meet in the tournament and decide it that way.
Man, that would be incredible. I don't think it can happen to the yeah, it can't happen to the final four.
Yep.
Final four or even the no, it would have to be in the championship, I think. So
Let's go.
let's do it. Kentucky versus Coach Cal. I'm here for it. I'm here for kind of whatever happens. I don't think, you know, based on the fact that I picked Duke to win the championship and I win all my pools if Duke wins, there is no bad outcome for me here. I don't, I'm not going to be mad about any of these teams winning the championship.
Yeah.
Although if we're looking for, so like, there's a bunch of good games this weekend. Like, I think this is going to be a super fun round. But if you're looking at like the next round, there is a potential for a Michigan State matchup.
I was gonna bring that up. Like
Yeah,
I would very much like to see Michigan State in the Elite Eight.
I think that would be super fun.
Yeah.
Um, man, the, honestly, like the thing that's kind of funny about the tournament is if I look at the 16 teams that are left, the team that I am the most surprised they are here is Ole Miss. I don't like find me one person who picked Ole Miss to be in the Sweet 16 that is not like a massive Ole Miss homer. Who has cared about Ole Miss at all this season?
That's a valid point.
And they come out and they smoke North Carolina and Iowa State. Like honestly, I mean they beat North Carolina by 7, but that game got a little bit closer at the end, and they beat Iowa State by 13. So I'd be a little bit nervous. I'm probably like weirdly more nervous for Michigan State than I am for Michigan against Auburn. In a way, I think
Yeah.
Ole Miss is playing good basketball right now, man. But I don't know. I think the other interesting subplot is how much more does the SEC dominate? You know, they set the record by getting 14 teams into the tournament. I call it 13 because Texas only got into the play-in game, but they got 14 in. Half those teams made the Sweet 16. You know, are they going to keep setting records? Like, at least one of them is going to get eliminated because Kentucky plays Tennessee. Um, but you got Alabama, BYU, you got Texas Tech and Arkansas, Florida, Maryland, Ole Miss, Michigan State, Auburn, Michigan. Like, how many of those teams advance? Do we see 4, 5, 6 make it? Like, does this just become the SEC's tournament? Like the SEC and Duke. That's it. It's funny, like the ACC only has one team, but it might just be the best team.
Yeah.
I was watching Duke versus Baylor the other day, and I was like, okay, first of all, between the 7-2 kid from Africa and Cooper Flag, good fucking luck
Yeah.
driving to the lane. And then Proctor, the guard, was like hitting step back threes. He was like dropping dudes and hitting step back threes. And I was like, if this guy's going to hit those shots,
Yeah.
this is, and they're going to play defense like this is
Mhm.
already over, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, we know that Duke has the best player, and that alone might be enough for them to be the best team.
Yeah. I think them versus Arizona is like a fun matchup with the whole Caleb Love angle, but would not be surprised if they cover the 9.5, which is the biggest spread for this weekend.
Yeah.
So, and I'm rooting for him to do it. You know, it's like, God, probably the worst option left is if Duke wins the national championship from like an excitement standpoint, but it would be very exciting to me because I picked them. But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. You can find our videos on TikTok, Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. We will be back next week to talk about the Final Four. We have the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight this weekend. So the next podcast is going to be primarily about the Final Four, but I think we're also going to start getting into our first takes of the NFL draft.
Yeah.
So next week, little hodgepodge cast, Final Four, and NFL draft stuff. And then after that, it is NFL draft season on the podcast with, I think, 3 or 4 straight podcasts about the NFL draft. We'll do like biggest questions and gambling. We'll do my guys. We'll do a mock draft. We'll do post draft episode. Yeah, this is like, I think April is probably the best month of this podcast every year.
Yeah,
with the NFL draft stuff, especially with my team picking a super high pick. I've obviously been looking forward to it a lot. I sat on the podcast. I needed a distraction. And as much as I've enjoyed March Madness, it was not a powerful enough distraction because I was sitting there doing mock drafts again today. Now that Intel has changed and we're looking at 2 quarterbacks potentially going in the top 3, looking at some different Patriot draft scenarios. I'm like, what does it look like if we get Carter? What does it look like if we get Hunter?
It's probably 2 quarterbacks in the top 2.
That's my dream, Matt. Don't play with my dream. I'm not going to believe it until it happens because I've been saying for months that I don't feel like 2 quarterbacks are going to go before the Patriots draft. But being in a position where you either get Hunter or Carter and you don't have to make the decision, like, obviously you want the decision, but I don't really trust this front office to make the decision. It's like if we would have had the option to pick between Drake May and Jaden Daniels last year, we would have screwed it up, but we had the 3rd pick. And so I was like, okay, we just take whatever quarterback falls to us. And now it's like, hey, Hunter or Carter, whoever falls for us, that's all we got to do. It's super easy, Elliot Wolf. Just do the right thing. Do not draft Will Campbell over Abdul Carter. I would be so furious. But all right, my friend, I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Robin.